Connor Landry never expected his journey to end like this. He was a cargo technician, not a soldier or an explorer. His job was to deliver supplies between distant research stations. He wasn't a hero. He never wanted to be one. But now, his ship lay in ruins across the rocky surface of an unknown planet, and he was the only one left alive. Everything had happened so fast. A sudden burst of radiation scrambled his ship's systems. The engines failed. Lights flickered. Emergency sirens echoed through the narrow corridors. He tried to send a distress call, but the signal wouldn't go through. The only option was to land or crash. And crash he did. He woke up hours later, still strapped into his seat, his helmet cracked but holding. Blood dried on his forehead. The main console was dead. Smoke filled the cabin. Through the broken window, he could see nothing but a dark forest glowing faintly under two pale moons. He couldn't even tell if the planet was listed on any map. Connor knew he had to move. Oxygen was leaking. The backup tanks wouldn't last long. He grabbed his survival kit and limped out of the wreckage, his leg injured from the landing. Every breath felt heavier, every step more painful. But staying put meant dying. The forest was quiet, too quiet. The trees were tall and strange, their trunks smooth like glass, their leaves pulsing with soft green light. There were no birds, no animals, just the sound of wind brushing through the branches. The air smelled different, like metal and flowers at the same time. Connor didn't know if it was safe to breathe, but he didn't have much choice. As night fell, he grew weaker. His vision blurred. The temperature dropped. He fell near a glowing stream, too tired to walk any farther. He thought it might be the end. He closed his eyes, whispering a weak apology to his family back on Earth. Then came the sound of heavy footsteps. At first he thought it was his mind playing tricks. But the ground trembled slightly, and there was a faint hum in the air, like distant thunder. He opened his eyes and tried to sit up, but he couldn't move. All he saw was a large shape approaching from the shadows between the trees. It was tall. No, massive. 12 feet at least, humanoid in shape, but clearly not human. A woman. Her skin shimmered silver blue under the moonlight, smooth and metallic like armor. Her eyes glowed with a soft violet light, and her long hair flowed behind her like strands of dark mist. She moved slowly, carefully, as if not to scare him. Connor tried to speak, but no words came out. The alien woman knelt beside him. Her face was calm, her expression unreadable. She studied him for a moment, then gently reached out and touched his chest, over the spot where his heart beat fast. Her hand was 3 times the size of his, but warm and steady. He expected fear. He expected pain, but what he felt instead was peace. Without speaking, she lifted him in her arms as if he weighed nothing. She moved through the forest quickly, gracefully, as if she had walked this path 1,000 times. Connor saw strange lights floating around them, small flying orbs that followed her silently. He was too tired to ask questions. His eyes closed. Again. When he woke, he was in a cave. No, something more advanced. The walls were smooth and curved like grown crystal. The light came from above, soft and blue. He was lying on a soft surface that adjusted to his shape. His wounds were bandaged, his leg wrapped in a gel-like material that seemed to pulse gently with warmth. The alien woman sat nearby, watching him. She had removed parts of her suit, revealing smooth, armor-like patterns that seemed part of her body. She held a small device that glowed with shifting symbols. When she saw he was awake, she tilted her head slightly, then pressed a button. A soft, musical tone filled the space. Then a calm voice, synthesized but clear, spoke in English. "Are you conscious?" Connor blinked. "Yes," he croaked. The alien looked at the device, then back at him. The translation worked. She said something in her own language, and the voice responded in English. "You are safe. No harm will come. You crashed. I found you. My name is Vailari." Connor nodded slowly. "Thank you." She didn't smile, but her eyes seemed kinder. She offered him water in a smooth, glowing container. He drank. It tasted different, slightly sweet but clean. Over the next few hours, Vailari monitored his condition. She spoke little but observed everything. When he tried to move, she stopped him gently and adjusted his healing wrap. Her movements were precise and calm. She seemed to understand medicine, engineering, and even a bit of Earth language thanks to her translator. Connor watched her closely. She was different from any life form he had ever seen, even in training files. Her body was a perfect blend of organic and synthetic. Her height should have been frightening, but somehow it wasn't. She carried herself like a guardian, not a warrior. As the night passed, Connor realized something. She didn't just save him. She was waiting, not for thanks, not for orders, but for something else. Trust. He didn't know why she helped him. He didn't know if she had ever met a human before, but she didn't treat him like a threat. She treated him like a guest, or perhaps something even more important. And as he drifted into sleep again, surrounded by strange lights and the sound of her quiet breathing nearby, one question stayed in his mind. Who was Vailari, and why did she save him? Connor didn't know how many days had passed since the crash. Inside the strange, crystal-like shelter, time felt different. The glowing walls shifted color with the outside light, and the air was always fresh and slightly cool. He had begun to walk again, slowly, thanks to the healing gel that covered his injured leg. Vailari never left him for long. She moved like a protector, always calm, always watching, never speaking much unless needed. The language barrier still existed, but they were finding ways around it. Her translation device was limited, often missing words or giving strange meanings, but both of them tried to bridge the gap. Connor used hand gestures, sketches on smooth stone tablets, and simple words. Vailari responded with careful nods, light touches to his shoulder, and the rare use of Earth words when the device worked correctly. One morning, while they sat beside a pool of glowing water inside the shelter, Connor tried to ask her where he was. He tapped his chest and said, "Me, Earth." Then he pointed at the ground and said, "Here?" Vailari tapped her chest, then said in her deep musical voice, "Vailari, Anari." She pointed to the world around them and said something he didn't recognize. Connor tried to repeat the word and she laughed, not loudly, but with a soft, amused sound. It was the first time he had seen her truly smile. The smile made her look less alien and more alive. From that day, they spent more time together, not just for healing, but for learning. Vailari began showing him the forest outside. She took him to a place where the trees opened into a wide field filled with floating flowers. The petals danced through the air like butterflies, glowing gently as they moved. The air was warm, and small animals peeked out from behind rocks, strange creatures with wide eyes and long ears. Vailari showed him how to gather fruit from the trees and how to check if it was safe. She seemed to understand that his body was different, more fragile, and she always tested food before offering it. She never rushed him. She treated him like someone valuable. Connor, in return, told her about Earth, at least what he could explain. He drew a picture of the planet, the oceans, the cities. He pointed to himself and said, "Home." She looked at it for a long time, then turned and touched the sky. Then she placed her hand over her heart. He didn't understand exactly what she meant, but it felt like she was saying something important. Connor slowly adjusted to life under the care of Vailari. Each day he felt stronger, but the world around him still felt like a dream or another planet in a storybook. The strange cave-like structure he now called shelter wasn't just stone. It responded to touch, light, and sound. When Vailari passed her hand over a wall, shapes appeared, glowing softly, showing maps and symbols he didn't understand. He watched her often. Vailari moved with calm strength, always aware of her surroundings. Her silver-blue skin shimmered. Under the pale lights of her shelter, and her long, graceful limbs made her seem more like a work of art than a living creature. She rarely spoke, but when she did, she used her small translator device. Over time, the voice became clearer, smoother. They began to understand each other more. Connor started learning how to say simple words in her language, names of things, directions, numbers. She seemed pleased when he tried, even though she didn't smile often. Her way of showing emotion was through gentle movements, like placing her hand lightly on his shoulder or tilting her head when he asked questions. One morning, as Connor sat near a table-like structure, Vailari approached and showed him a glowing image from her translator. It was a diagram, a tall figure like her and a smaller one like him, standing together, a thread connecting their hearts. Connor looked up, confused. "What's this?" Vailari spoke slowly, her deep voice quiet but clear through the translator. "Connection, understanding, two minds." He blinked. "You mean communication?" She shook her head. "More, deeper." That day she took him outside. His leg was mostly healed and the air felt warmer now. Vailari led him through the forest, past glowing flowers and tall trees that looked like glass sculptures. They stopped by a pool of still water. In the middle stood a stone with symbols carved deep into its surface. Vailari touched it and looked at Connor. "Sacred place," she said. "For sharing." She sat down by the water and waited. Connor hesitated, then joined her. They sat in silence for a while. Then, to his surprise, she placed her palm over her heart, then over his. He copied her. She spoke again. "This means I listen." It wasn't just a greeting. It felt like a ritual. Each day after that, Vailari taught him more about her people, the Inari. She was a guardian, left behind when others left the planet, long ago. The storms had made contact with her kind nearly impossible. She had stayed, keeping balance in her forest, living alone for years. Connor shared stories of Earth, of his work, his family, the blue sky and the sea. Vailari listened, never interrupting. Sometimes she asked questions. "What is laughter? Why do you fear silence? What is home to you?" He realized how lonely she had been. Her strong body hid a quiet sadness. She had protected the land for so long, but there was no one left to protect with her. Connor was the first new voice she had heard in years. One night, while they sat by the stone pool again, he looked at her and smiled. "You know, I think we make a good team." Vailari tilted her head. "Team? Partners. Companions." He explained. She seemed to think about it, then nodded. "Then we are bonded?" He laughed softly. "Well, not exactly. That word means something serious on Earth." Vailari stood slowly, facing him. Her tall form towered over him, but her presence was never threatening. She leaned down and pressed her forehead lightly to his. Connor froze. He remembered the gesture from earlier. She had shown it once, explaining that it was something sacred. "Oh, I didn't mean like that," he said nervously. "I was just saying we're good together, not that I'm... You know." Vailari stepped back, eyes searching his face. Connor rubbed the back of his neck. "Did I just propose or something?" She didn't speak right away. Then, slowly, she gave a small nod. "Yes." His mouth fell open. "What?" "You touched. You spoke of bond. That is, proposal." Connor stared at her in shock. He had no idea his words and actions meant so much in her culture. He had just been friendly, but now he had accidentally followed a sacred tradition of her people. Vailari's eyes glowed softly. "You did not know?" "No. I mean, I didn't know it meant that." She turned away, quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, "Still?" I smiled. A heavy silence settled in the days after the rescue signal came. Connor now had a way out. A transport vessel from Earth was expected to reach orbit in 5 Earth days. All he had to do was activate his beacon, and they'd come straight to his location. After everything he had gone through, that should have been a relief. But it wasn't. Each morning, he would wake up before Vailari and go outside alone, wandering through the glowing forest trails. The air here had become familiar. The soft wind, the sparkling leaves, the gentle warmth from the twin moons. It all felt like part of him now. And Vailari, she had become more than a protector or guide. She was the one who had saved him without asking for anything in return. She had treated him with quiet care, showing him her world piece by piece. Even when he accidentally proposed through a simple gesture, she hadn't forced the bond. She only asked one thing: honesty. And now, he had to decide. Connor spent one full day helping her repair a broken root system near the edge of the forest. The trees here glowed less brightly, and the ground was dry and cracked. Vailari moved with strength, carrying heavy stones and adjusting flow lines buried beneath the soil. Connor did his best to follow her movements, using the tools she gave him. At one point, he looked up and asked, "Why do you do all this alone?" Vailari didn't answer right away. She placed her hand on one of the trees and closed her eyes. The lights in the leaves responded to her touch, pulsing softly. "People left long ago," she said through the translator. "Some fled the storms. Others were lost. I remained." "Why you?" he asked. She turned to him. "Because I knew one day, something or someone would return." He felt the weight of those words. They weren't just about the forest. They were about her heart, about hope. That night, Connor sat by the sacred pool again, staring at the calm surface. He thought about his old life: Earth, space stations, control panels, crowded ships, endless schedules. It was safe, predictable. But something about this place, about her, had changed him. Vailari joined him without speaking. She sat across the pool, her tall form still and glowing under the moonlight. After a long silence, she finally asked, "Do you wish to return?" "I don't know," Connor replied truthfully. "You have family," she said. "Not anymore," he said, shaking his head. "No one waiting." They sat in silence again. The pool reflected the moons above them. Then she stood and slowly walked around the pool, kneeling beside him. "If you choose to leave, I will not stop you," she said. "But I must offer truth." Connor turned to her. "What truth?" She reached out and gently placed her large hand over his chest again, above his heart. "You were not just an accident. You did not crash here by mistake." He looked at her, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Vailari looked toward the sky. "This planet chooses. It listens. It responds to thought. It brought you." Connor's heart beat faster. "You think the planet wanted us to meet?" She nodded. "It wanted balance. I was alone. You were lost. Now we are found." He didn't know what to say. It sounded like something from a story. But deep down, he believed her. Somehow, his crash, his survival, even the bond, they weren't random. They were connected. The next day, the clouds above changed. A massive magnetic storm approached from the west, rolling across the horizon like waves of fire and mist. The bay winds picked up, and the lights in the forest flickered. Vailari guided him back to the shelter quickly. "This storm will block communication," she said. "You must decide now." Connor stared at the beacon in his hand. One press, and he'd be gone from here forever. Back to the world he knew. Back to safety. Vailari stood by the entrance of the shelter watching him. She said nothing. Connor looked at the small glowing device, then back at her. The woman who had carried him from the forest, who had shared her home, her stories, her rituals, and her silence. He took a deep breath. Then he placed the beacon on the ground and stepped away. "I'm staying," he said. Vailari blinked slowly. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Connor said, voice steady. "I don't know everything yet, and I don't know what comes next. But this place, it feels right. Like I'm supposed to be here." She didn't smile, not with her mouth. But her eyes softened, and her hand reached out once more. This time slowly, gently. He stepped forward and touched his forehead to hers. No translator needed this time. Something passed between them. Understanding, trust, a beginning. The storm howled outside, but inside the shelter there was stillness. Connor had made his choice, not because he was trapped, but because he had been found. And Vailari, she was no longer alone. The days after Connor's decision to stay passed like a gentle river flowing through the strange land. Rescue no longer called him. Instead, the world around him grew richer, fuller, more alive. The forest that once seemed alien now felt like home. And Vailari, tall, strong, and mysterious, was no longer just a stranger. She was his companion, his guide, and something deeper, something he hadn't expected. They worked together to build a new kind of home. Vailari's knowledge of the land and her ancient technology mixed with Connor's hands and ideas. They crafted a shelter that breathed with the forest, glowing softly with natural light and humming with quiet power. It was a place where both, human and Inari, could live and grow. Vailari taught Connor more of her culture, and Connor shared stories of Earth. He told her about the oceans, the stars, and the laughter of children. Vailari listened, eyes wide with wonder, asking questions about things she had never seen or heard before, and Connor learned about her people, how they once spread across the stars, how their planet had changed, and how she had waited for someone to share her world with. Sometimes, when the moons were high and the air was still, Vailari would pull him close, her great height bending gently so their foreheads touched, the ancient gesture of trust and bonding. He could feel her heartbeat beneath his hand, strong and steady, like the pulse of the planet itself. Connor felt the weight of their bond every day. It was more than words or promises. It was something real, something alive between them, a connection that grew stronger as they learned to understand each other without needing many words. One morning, as the sun cast soft pink light across the glowing trees, Connor woke to find Vailari standing outside their shelter, watching the horizon. She looked different somehow, calmer, lighter. He stepped outside and joined her. Together they watched the twin moons slowly fade as the sun climbed higher. "I have thought," Vailari said quietly, "of the future." Connor looked at her, heart beating fast. "What do you see?" She smiled, a small, shy curve of her lips that made her eyes shine. "A path, not just for me or for you, for both." He reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cool, but warm to his touch. "Together," he said. Vailari nodded. "Together." Time passed, seasons changed, and their life became a peaceful balance of work and rest exploration, and quiet moments. They learned from each other, Connor teaching Vailari about human music and stories, and Vailari showing Connor how to read the forest signs, to listen to the language of light and wind. One evening, while the stars glittered overhead, Connor looked at Vailari and asked, "Do you ever miss them, your people?" She thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, but now I have you." He smiled softly. "And I have you." The bond between them was no longer a question. It was a promise made without words. Years later, when visitors finally came from Earth, curious explorers drawn by the strange signals from Kepler 9b, they found a place of wonder. A forest alive with glowing light, and at its heart, two figures standing tall and proud. One human, one Inari, united not by force, but by choice. Vailari greeted them with calm strength, and Connor stood beside her, ready to share their story. Not just a story of survival, but a story of connection, of finding family in the most unexpected places, of a bond that crossed stars and species, a promise made by a gesture, a smile, and a choice to stay. And deep in their eyes was the answer to the question Connor had once whispered to himself, lying broken and lost. No, he had not meant to propose, but he was glad he did.